Hello and welcome to another episode of Trace Thursdays with Tracy. I am Tracy, and before I get started, I want to thank everyone for watching today. Um, Remember to like this video, share this video. I found out that you can share it while it's live on your Facebook page, so that's a good thing to do. And remember that September the 3rd, I am sponsoring a scavenger hunt because I need a laptop desperately bad. You can see the link right there. You can also visit my website at tracymediallc.com. And you want to consider supporting my new fundraising for the new direction of this channel. There is the link right there. I am going to bring on my guest, Rebecca Parson, and let her introduce herself. Ma'am, how are you doing this evening?
I'm good.
Or
How are
this
you,
afternoon for
Tracy?
you? This afternoon for you,
Uh,
right?
yeah, it's afternoon, 4:30. I'm good. Thank you for having me on. Nice to
Oh,
meet
I'm
you.
so glad. And I have to give big props to Anna Hart, who's one of our
hmm
Patreons who um, arrange this whole thing. She kept saying, "You got to have her on." I'm like, "Well, no, I keep sending emails. I keep sending emails." And she's like, "Finally, send it here and do this." And it worked out perfectly. So I want to thank Anna, even though she isn't here right now. I want to get started with having you tell just us about the office that you're running for, what district it covers, and a little bit about, well, I'll ask that question after you get finished.
yeah, Rebecca Parson. I'm running for Congress in Washington's 6th Congressional District. I also ran in 2020, got 35,000 votes. I'm running again for 2022. The primary is in August. The 6th District is Tacoma and the northwest corner of the state, Kitsap County in the Olympic Peninsula. And it's a very diverse district. We've got cities, towns, suburban areas, rural areas, but common problems across the whole district that are facing people no matter where they live, what their background is. One of those is housing. It's unaffordable for homeowners and renters. Lack of good jobs. Minimum wage is not enough to live on. So I'm the only candidate in the race and the first in the country to call for a $30 minimum wage, which is the minimum living wage across the country, even in areas that people who live in, for example, I don't know, San Francisco, New York, they think, oh, well, Mississippi, it must be affordable. No, even in every county in the country, $30 is the minimum wage. And so I'm running on increasing the minimum wage to $30, a national housing plan to make sure that everybody has a home, a national federal jobs program so that everybody can get a job, a national jobs program, which we need so that people can get good paying union jobs and then also do the work of transitioning our economy to green energy, which means building and rehabbing a lot of infrastructure, a lot of work that needs to be done. So those are some of the policies that I stand for, and yeah, a little bit about me in the district.
Now, you did say that this is your second time running, and since I've never been to Washington State, how many registered voters are in the district that you're running in?
So the district has about 750,000 people. About over half are registered voters. But then the turnout it varies year to year, but it's not, it's still a fraction of people who are registered that actually vote. And we have a top two, some people call it jungle primary setup, like California, which is where everybody runs against everybody else in the primary, regardless of party. And the top two vote getters go through to the general. And so you could end up in a situation where two Democrats are running against each other in the general election.
Okay, so I would like you to. Oh, and I see we have the guest out there. So whoever you are, guest, say hello. I would like you to talk about a little bit about what led you to run for office in the first place.
Oh, I've been involved in activism for years and years, and especially after the Trump election in 2016, I wanted to get more involved with political activism and electoral politics. And so I joined my local Indivisible group, and the Indivisible model is all about contacting your representative and senators and telling them what you want them to do. And what I found was no matter how much we contacted Kilmer, he was not willing to budge, not willing to do anything meaningful to stand up against Trump or to support any of the policies that are popular in our district and across the country, like Medicare for all and the Green New Deal. And so I saw that he wasn't going to budge, refused to give an inch at all, and that he had never faced any meaningful or real challenge in his entire political career. Almost his entire career as an adult has been being a politician, never once been challenged, just kind of coasted through as the political establishment's chosen person to go through to race after race after race. And across the district, people really need these solutions like Medicare for all and the Green New Deal, more jobs, more housing. So I decided to run and bring the message out to more people and hopefully win and be able to have somebody in Congress actually fighting for these issues instead of pushing back and stopping progress, because he's taken millions of dollars in corporate money funded by Chevron. So a Chevron Democrat opposing progress is not who we need in a district like this that's been blue for over 50 years.
So that's okay, because the way you were describing him, no, but you're in Washington. For some reason, I thought, oh, she's describing a Republican. She's got to be. She's got to be describing a Republican. I'm like,
no, he's actually a Democrat.
No, he's actually. Yeah, I just remembered. I'm like, oh, he's a Democrat. Mm-hmm. Another question I wanted to ask, and some of my Patreons tease me about running for office, which I don't want to do. But what do you tell people who, like me, are frustrated? You have the two major parties. You have the Republicans who are, how can I put this nicely? They're not 100% there in terms of common sense, in terms of platform, in terms of anything. They just seem to be ruled by the outer hinges people. That's who they're ruled by. But then you have the Democratic Party, and I'm talking about the corporate Democrats, who say they're on our side. We elect them. They get there, and it's like, oh, okay, where's that $15 minimum wage? Where did that go? Like, how do you get people to support you when they're saying, hey, we've tried to do it this way, but every time we send somebody, do the opposite of what they're saying they're going to do?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I understand the feeling. I feel that way too, and really considered not running again. But what I decided was I'm going to give it one more shot, go as a Democrat, because, unfortunately, there's this kind of twofold thing going on where when you poll voters, over half of them say they want a third party or that they consider themselves independent. But then when they get the choice, they usually choose either blue or red team, blue team, because they're afraid that something worse will happen. It's lesser of two evils choice. And that's been the case in my district. Anytime there's been, because there have been third party and independent challengers to my opponent, Derek Kilmer, before, and they always get, 1-2% of the vote. Voters just seem to not be ready to let go of it. And there's also considerations like with fundraising, it would be much more difficult to even raise money if I weren't a Democrat, because I would get kicked off my fundraising platform, which is what all the donors are used to. All the progressive donors, they all have accounts on it. So I'd be like, okay, we're going to move over to this platform. It would make fundraising a lot harder. So there's some like practical considerations of why I chose to, then where the voters are at and who they're willing to vote for. But then also in terms of activist concerns, like, are you just going to be another one of these people who says you support Medicare for all, but then you refuse to even, force a vote on it, refuse to vote, refuse to push and use your seat to really push? And what I would say is that, my past as an organizer, actions speak louder than words. And that's what I've done in the past, is direct action. Like here in Tacoma, I co-founded a group that occupied an empty building, an empty school building that had been empty for 12 years, and also an empty hotel to get more housing for homeless people. And we got 200 shelter beds added in in the city of Tacoma. And that direct action, I risked arrest. And after that, the city sent detectives around to all the activists who were involved, sent them around to our houses, tried to intimidate us. We got a lot of intimidation from the right wing. People doxed me. So I even had people guarding my front door because I was doxed by neo-Nazis, just because of these housing actions. So what I would say is, it's easy for somebody to come along and say, hey, I believe in this and that, and I'm an activist, but ask them, like, what have they actually been doing? What have they risked? What have they put on the line? And so that's what I want to take to Congress is, something else I've noticed, as a candidate is, for example, in between my campaigns when I wasn't a candidate, I could tweet something about healthcare or housing or homelessness and maybe get some engagement, tweet the exact same thing as a candidate and get way more, thousands of likes, tons of engagement. And just because I'm a candidate saying those things. So if I were in Congress, I would get even more attention for saying those things. For example, as a candidate, I tweeted, we need to raise the minimum wage to $30 an hour. Fox News picked it up, did a piece on that, attacking the idea. But even though they attacked it, it got over 700,000 views on their YouTube channel. So that's all those people who were exposed to this idea. And Fox News would not have cared at all if I were just some private citizen who said we need that. So if I were in Congress, I'd be able to do even more there. So put the ideas out there and push and use my position in this federal, national position to say, because inevitably, the Democratic Party is not going to support these bold housing plans or anything that, these ideas that I have. So when they inevitably do that, then I can use the seat to call direct action and say, okay, to my followers and supporters, people in the movement, let's get together. Let's peacefully occupy, this location or apply pressure in this way and put out a call and draw people from around the country. Because that's what really, a lot of politicians have been failing to do. They get this, for example, Bernie Sanders, he raises money for strike funds and for labor unions. He uses his email list to promote causes that are really important. And it's really wonderful to see him do that because very few politicians do. But he doesn't use his huge following and the movement, all these people who are excited about him in 2016, 2020 to say, everybody gather at this point. We're going to peacefully occupy this location to apply pressure. That's the extra thing, the extra step further that I want to go.
That was a whole lot more than I thought you were going to say. Because if you've ever watched any of the past episodes, I just completely throw away the Republican Party. I don't care about them. My hope for the Republican Party is just go away. Just go. Don't come back. Just don't. But I'm so critical of the Democratic Party because I guess if I had to pick two, if these are the two I have to pick, then I'm gonna have to go with the Democrats. I don't necessarily want to, but as you said, a third party candidate really has a hard time, one, raising money, two, raising interest, three, getting they just have a whole myriad of challenges that they have. The one thing I did want to ask you about is, and Susan, hello, Susan. She wanted to say that you need to be in Congress right now.
Thank you, Susan.
Is one of our Patreons. When you're running, and I'm going to assume this because, of course, I live in Indiana, so I don't know anything about Washington State. I'm assuming you all have debates.
We have debates, but I don't get invited to them. And even when I do,
okay.
Even I did get invited to one. It was a town hall, so to give people you have like a forum style where the person asks each person a question, they answer as if there's nobody else on stage. Then you have a debate where you are able to go at it and argue with each other about your ideas. There are very few debates because people want to keep things all civil and nice. So very few debates anyway. They're usually more in the forum setup. But even in that case, I've only ever been invited to one, and Derek Elmer refused to come to it.
So when you're trying to get the word out about your campaign, I know you have like a team of people who are out canvassing. And I know that money is super tight, and I'll let you plug your website for donations here at the end. But what are they telling what message is it that they're communicating to voters that can get them excited about showing up at the polls?
Well, people really like Bernie in this district. He won in the caucus in 2016, and then in 2020 came a close second to Biden. That was already after Biden had basically won the primary, and people, Bernie's basically done. But even with that, he still came in a close second in 2020 to Biden in the primary. So what we found is effective is just, hey, there's this working class woman running on Bernie's policies, first woman to run in the seat, first gay person to run in the seat, and just talk about those economic issues. Like she supports a $30 minimum wage, universal health care, so you can go to the doctor whenever you need it without having to worry about paying, whether you can afford it. More housing, more jobs, a jobs program. And in some parts of the district that are more conservative, people still really like FDR because he brought jobs programs. His, for example, the Civilian Conservation Corps was a national program, and they had camps all over the country, and they built roads and trails and like national park lodges and stuff like that. And so that program brought a lot of jobs to the district back during the Great Depression. People still have a memory of that. So just saying, hey, I support Bernie's policies, or being willing when they say, well, I don't like the Democrats, or I don't like Biden, or I don't like Hillary, say like, but neither do I. So just being honest about that does resonate with people.
Yeah, because we got another. Oh, yeah, okay. So Susan, she'll go over those here in just a bit. I totally skipped. Hello, Marlon. Yep, that's the problem that I have. It's because because of and this I'm definitely going to. Oh, I didn't leave the comment up long enough for you. I'm sorry. I'll put it right back up there because I'm so used to reading through them, just like go.
Yeah, I agree with First Law's comment there. Yeah, that's a good point.
Um, that's the next thing I want to talk about is the challenges um of raising money because I'm in a group of people that are like, it's time for us to vote third party. And I brought up the issue, okay, it's going to, if you're running for president. Now, you're not to put ideas in your head, but, 2024 is coming. But um, I said, if this person, and it's Nina Turner, runs for president, it costs, I believe, almost close to $1 billion if you add the two campaigns together to run for president. Now, I'm not going to say she's going to raise $1 billion. I don't think that's feasible. But to say she could stay in the race and not raise anything, I'm like, oh, you need. How do you balance when you have those hardcore progressives or hardcore independents to say, oh, we don't need money to run campaigns? And I'm like, well, how do you get flyers and TV ads and posters and all of these things out? Can you kind of explain to those people why it does take money and how you
Mhm.
use how small contributions work towards that? Because I'm assuming you don't take corporate PAC
Mhm.
money and you don't take interest money.
Yeah, I don't take any corporate PAC money, and it is expensive. I will say one thing is for congressional, I don't really think there's much of a chance running third party or independent, but presidential is different. We have had in the 90s, didn't Ross Perot, he got somewhere between 15 and 20% running independent. And so I do think on the presidential level might be possible. You might have more of a chance than maybe somebody with a really high profile like Nina Turner, or somebody who, like Donald Trump was already known because of his TV show. Like maybe we have somebody who already has a really high profile because they're in entertainment or something, and they could run independent. That might work. But with congressional, it's just hard to get national attention. And even if you have a national profile like Nina Turner running in her congressional race, she raised millions of dollars, and still lost because part of the reason, so much money was pumped in, like corporate money from outside the district to defeat her. So I will just say, that I do think the calculation's different for congressional versus presidential. But yeah, you really need the money. There's so much that costs money. Even if you think about it, for example, like, okay, as a progressive or a leftist, honestly, I don't think the word progressive means a whole lot anymore. It was especially with the way we've seen the progressive caucus behaving. But let's say you're progressive or leftist, you want to hold true to your values. Well, for me, that would mean paying people at least $30 an hour, right? So that's expensive. You think, okay, I've got somebody working 40 hours a week at $30 an hour. What is that, like 1,200 a week? So that's 4,800, almost 5,000 a month. Let's say I have just for 3 people, we're already at 15,000 just for salaries, a month. And then we've got running TV ads that costs tens of thousands of dollars, and people think, oh, that's old fashioned. You don't need that anymore. But the people who are most likely to vote, like Gen X and baby boomers, they do watch TV. They watch the TV ads, so it makes a difference. You've got to be able to afford the TV ads. You also have to afford digital. You want to be able to pump, depending on the size of the race, tens of thousands or millions of dollars into digital ads like Facebook. It also costs, thousands and thousands of dollars to print a mailer. And for example, as somebody who supports unions, you always want to use union shops whenever you can. But they are a little bit more expensive. It's worth it because you want to support unions. So you're paying a little bit more money for that mailer. That's thousands or tens of thousands of dollars, depending on the size of the race. So it really starts to add up quickly. And unfortunately, yeah, that's the primary concern when you're thinking about running is like, how are you going to raise money? Will you be able to raise enough?
And especially with corporate interests coming in, which, side note, that's one thing that really bothers me about leftist campaign. Oh, I'm going to talk about Susan's campaign and then come with my next question.
Spend the next 2
It's
years getting big money.
possible,
Yeah.
but we have a Supreme Court that pretty much rule corporations are people. And until the court changes, that's not going to really happen. Because you have Ted Cruz wanting to even get more money into the system and more ways to work around it. So it's possible, Susan. It's possible, but it's a hard job to do. Um, One of the other things I wanted to talk about that infuriates me about leftist campaigns, and I hope you're not doing this again. I don't follow your campaign as closely as Anna does, but when candidates will say, "Oh, well, dark money is coming in to play a role," I'm a person that I've always believed if someone's attacking my campaign, I'm going to name who the company is, how much they've given, and how that affects people. I don't know why that isn't employed. And maybe it's a bad strategy. Maybe it's just like not even a smart strategy, but I get so tired of hearing these vague, well, big money interests. Okay, who are you talking? Like, I don't know. Is there a company called Big Money Interest? Like, who are you talking about? I don't understand that.
Yeah, I don't know. There's almost like this desire to, not name names for some reason. Like that might be too negative or something. But yeah, I haven't had the outside money pour in the way it did with, higher profile races like Nina Turner, but there's definitely money funding my opponent. Like, for example, Amazon, they gave him $5,000 earmarked specifically for the primary, because when somebody donates money, they can earmark it. Is it for the primary or the general? So they gave it to him for the primary. So that means specifically to defeat me. And then he's also funded by Chevron and other big oil companies, real estate companies. Yeah. So I do think it's important to name names and not be afraid to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, and oh wait, we got another comment.
Open secrets is
Open
good. Yeah.
Secrets. That I
Hmm.
kept trying to think of that. I was like, what's the name of that website that you can go to, type in their name, and see everybody that is giving money? Thank you, Susan. Thank you. So my next question is, so you said is you in the race, another Democratic, the person who I'm assuming currently holds the seat.
Hmm.
Um, are there any other people vying for that same seat?
Yeah, right now, 3 Republicans. Last time in 2020, there were 4 Republicans, so we'll see what happens. Filing week, which is when you file with the state, and I have to pay $1,700 just to appear on the ballot. That happens next week. So by a week from tomorrow, I'll know for sure everybody who's running. But as of now, 3 Republicans.
Now, that's an interesting idea because I live in a state where if you want to run, if you don't want to run as a Democrat, you don't want to run as a Republican, you have to go out and gather signatures.
Mhm.
So paying a fee kind of sort of makes sense to me because if you could come up with $1,700, you're on the ballot.
Yeah, here we have a choice. You can either get it's 1% of the annual salary of the position is how they do it. So since members of Congress make $170,000 a year, you have to either get 1,700 signatures or pay $1,700. And last time and this time, I'm just paying because the issue with signatures is you're kind of opening yourself up to the establishment or your opponent doing some funny business with the signatures, invalidating them, doing what they can to get you off the ballot. But if you pay money, it's like, hey, I paid, here's the check. You can't really screw around with that as much as you can with signatures.
And so, and again, that's you're you're wanting to seat in a highly Democratic area. So I'm going to set up this scenario, and I hope the question makes sense. If it doesn't, I'll reframe it. So your primary is when?
Beginning of August.
So is it one day or two?
It's one day, but then there's 2 weeks of voting before it, and we're 100% like mail-in.
Mail-in, that's right.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm so used to, get up and go to. Hello, Chris, my newest Patreon.
Okay. Yeah, so Chris is in Washington State.
Okay, so the situation I want to set up is a what if, because I heard you say this in another interview and it just really hit me. You said that if you are elected, you would not join the Progressive Caucus. Can you discuss why you made that kind of a stance?
Yeah, the Progressive Caucus doesn't really stand for anything. They have members who are in that Progressive Caucus and the New Democrats. The New Democrat Coalition is actually Derek Kilmer, my opponent, was the chair of it last season. And they're the, kind of Clinton pro-corporate conservative business wing of the Democratic Party. They support free trade deals that hurt workers. They oppose unionization. They oppose Medicare for all, the Green New Deal, jobs. I mean, basically all these, big universal programs that we want. And so to me, it's just how can you? I don't see the point in a caucus that is pushing for progressive policies, but would allow somebody in it who doesn't support those policies, And so I think there's more power in having a small committed group of people, even if it's only 5 who are, in a group together and strategize together and decide we're going to vote this way. This is going to be these are our tactics to push forward on this issue or that issue. And when you have 5 people who are really disciplined and willing to stick their neck out and actually have a backbone, you can do a lot. And so that's what I'd be interested in doing. Like Jason Call he's also running in Washington State in a different district, and he's talked about starting a caucus like that. And I think that would be powerful to get progressive policies moving forward.
What do you? Here's what I struggle with, and I don't even know how to frame this question, because as a person who considers herself to the left, and I have what some people would call just crazy ideas. I'm definitely left of the Democratic Party. And I've been known, because I don't tend to hold my opinions to myself, to just say, okay, you're not doing this, this, and this, and this, and this, and stop campaigning on things you're not going to do. So to set up this scenario I was talking about, you get into office, you're elected, you win, you're going to Congress. What 3 things would be your top agenda? And then the second part of my question is, if you get put on a committee that doesn't address those 3 issues, how do you make sure that those issues are addressed?
Yeah, first of all, the top three for me are climate change because if we don't address that, everything else becomes moot. The latest IPCC report is, we're headed towards 2, 3, 4 degrees of warming. Really, nothing meaningful is being done, and even the bill that Democrats were touting as a climate bill, it had tens of billions of dollars in fossil fuel subsidies. It's just a joke. So, for me, climate change extremely important. And included in the Green New Deal, which I support, is a jobs program to, again, lay down all the pipes, the wire, the roads, all the railroad tracks, all the stuff that's needed to transition to 100% renewable energy. So included in that is more jobs. And then housing for all. For every homeless person in the US, there are 28 empty homes. And people hear that and they're like, well, that doesn't sound right. I mean, because we have a housing shortage. Every day on the news, I see we have a housing shortage. Well, we have a shortage of available homes or affordable homes, but we don't actually have a shortage of homes. There are many empty homes. They're just not available because they're somebody's 10th vacation home, like Mark Zuckerberg, or they're completely out of reach, or because a city has given tax breaks to real estate developers to build unaffordable $5,000 a month apartments that no working person can afford. So when you hear me say that, just keep in mind what I'm saying is, like, for example, and that's homes. There's also empty buildings like the empty school that have been empty for over a decade that we tried to turn into housing. So there is available housing in some areas that are, very expensive with population growth, like Seattle, for example, and Tacoma. Yeah, there needs to be some construction, but also there's a lot of housing that's available that's not being used. So that's number 2, housing. And then 3 is Medicare for all, and a program, Medicare for all, that allows everybody to get the healthcare they need, because we still have tens of millions of people who are uninsured, even with Obamacare, and then people who are on Obamacare who are underinsured. So even though they have a plan, their premium might be thousands of dollars, so they can't afford it, right? Or going to the doctor each time is $50 and they can't afford it. So people who have it, but it makes no difference because they can't afford to use it. So those are the 3 issues. And then your second question is really good, because sometimes people will ask me, well, what committees do you want to be on? And it's like, well, they could do to me what they did to, I can't remember her name now, but a congresswoman, maybe in the 70s or 80s from New York City, very progressive. She got in ready to challenge the system. Then they put her on the agriculture committee. She's from New York City. It's like, no, there's nothing, no cornfields in her district in New York City, right? They deliberately put her on a committee that really had nothing to do with her district, that she couldn't use to help her constituents. So, yeah, they could do something like that to me. And what I would do is, as much as I really do not like Marjorie Taylor Greene, do not support any of her policies. She's a racist right-wing bigot. But she knows how to use her position without being on any committees. She got kicked off of her committees, but she still is constantly generating news cycles, getting on the news. She still can speak on the floor of the House, even though she's not on committees. And recently, one of her speeches, she was pointing out, like, why do we have $40 billion for Ukraine, but American mothers and babies can't get baby formula? And that speech she gave on the floor of the House has gotten now over 2 million views on Twitter. It'll probably be covered on Fox News. Maybe they'll cover it on MSNBC too. So she's in even more of an extreme position where she's not on any committees at all. So if I got onto committees that weren't about, these issues, I would just use the position of being in Congress that comes with it, like to try to get onto cable news, get my issues and ideas out there, the way I did with getting the $30 minimum wage onto Fox, and using my time on the floor to get attention and more views on social media.
Thank you for answering that question, because I'm always like, okay, there's certain people, I'd like to call them the presidents of petty. Um, they're just these group of people. I'm like, okay, that person is petty and that person is petty. And you win if you beat the establishment. Oh, they're coming for you. That's it. You might as well get ready for it. But we got some actual comments here to look at. Abandoned homes. I don't know if I agree with this statement or not. I see where you're going, Marlon, but I'm not sure if I agree with it. Because you have a whole lot of houses, especially here in our area, that they're just literally sitting there. We have more houses than we do homeless people. Like literally, we have more houses than homeless people. Like, okay, could you just put those people in those houses and it's all the things? So I'm not sure if land has anything to do with it, but I don't know. You can tell me.
Absolutely, yeah. To Susan's comment, there are actually big possibilities in agriculture. If you go against agribusiness, family farmers are still pissed. Yeah. And there's farming in my district. So if they did put me on that committee, I would be able to do stuff for my constituents, unlike the congresswoman in New York. I wish I could remember her name, but she was in like it's a very, very urban district, no farms. But yeah, absolutely. If you're pushing for the small family farmer, um, yeah, and going against agribusiness, yeah, you do. It's a worthy fight for sure.
And this is the unfortunate, unpleasant portion of the interview. Talk about your opponent in terms of, for the primary, in terms of what he's done correctly, if anything, and where you think he's really missing the mark.
Now, correctly, I would say I do hear that he has pretty good constituent services. So, something a lot of people don't know is that a big part of being a member of Congress is a big part of your office is devoted to kind of something like social work. Somebody will call in and be like, I'm not getting my Social Security, or, you know, uh, they, um, they're widowed and their deceased spouse, had these benefits that they're supposed to be getting and they're not getting it. And can you please, help me with this? And members of Congress can do that with federal agencies. Some agencies are under the executive and some are under Congress in terms of authority. So if it's an agency that's under Congress's authority, then your member of Congress can go to bat for you and have their caseworkers on their staff deal with these agencies to get you those benefits. So that's something I've heard he has done for people, is get them these benefits and navigate with these federal agencies. Something I would say, that's one aspect of constituent services, but one that he's really not good at is when people disagree with him on policy and contact him. Really not good there. Like if you get a response, it'll be a form response with just vague blah blah blah. I support everybody's right to maybe have access to healthcare sometime, and vague, just really really vague form letters back, but never budge on the issue. Just does not listen to constituents in its own district who want Medicare for all, for example, or the Green New Deal, or who say, hey, could you stop taking money from big pharma and big big corporate hospital chains, or could you stop taking money from Chevron? No, he just does not listen to that stuff.
Yeah, and I have more comments coming in here. I'm loving the comments coming. Even a blind squirrel. Okay. When your instructions do. I don't know what this means, Susan. You're gonna have to explain this to me. Be right back. Okay.
Yeah, be right back.
Okay, I'm like, huh? Is she talking about some new program? So second to last question here, because I've kept you way past the time I told you, and I apologize, but thank you for
happy to be here. Yeah.
Thank you for doing this. So unless our audience has been sleeping under rocks, it got released that the Supreme Court is most likely going to overturn the Roe v. Wade decision. And of course, you have people on the right saying they care about the sanctity of life. And life begins at, well, they say conception, but I'm like, well, there's fertilization and that whole argument. But they don't seem to care about the children, like after they're born. How much of an issue is the Roe v. Wade decision in your district, or is it even a concern right now?
Yeah, people are definitely upset. There's protests planned in different places across the district this weekend. I think it's a national day of action for protests around Roe v. Wade. So people are very upset, and the debate is so polarized and acrimonious and bitter that I think what gets obscured is the fact that 70% of Americans do not want Roe v. Wade overturned. And even people who think abortion is, unfortunate, or it's a difficult circumstance or a difficult decision to make, they still don't think that that right to choose should be taken away. So there's the American public supports Roe v. Wade, and so do so does this district. So it is definitely a big issue here, and it's extremely frustrating that we're in this position because Roe v. Wade was passed 50 years ago, so half a century, and in all that time, Democrats didn't do anything to codify it into law. They just let it stay as a Supreme Court decision and kept fundraising off it and saying, help us defeat the big bad Republicans so that they don't strip away abortion, but never actually taking action and passing a bill into law to make it a federally protected right.
Yeah, and as much as I just don't love Amy Klobuchar, nothing she says makes sense to me. I'm like, she got that exactly right. I'm like, you know what? A wrong clock is right twice a day because that's exactly what we need. I'm just like, okay, when I raise that criticism of the Democrats, it seems like, and I keep saying we, but I don't even consider myself a Democrat because I'm just like, okay, you haven't really done anything for me, so I'm more socialist, left leaning. But when you look at this party and you're campaigning, you're trying to get elected to office, and you're campaigning as a Democrat, I know I asked this in terms of what challenges that you face, but now I'm going to kind of shift the question is how can you encourage, like, if you win and get there, or even if you come up a little bit short and you don't win, how can we make our legislators federal? Because yes, you could do some things on a state level, but like myself, I live in a very red state. I don't think anything we're going to do is going to change the abortion ban that I know is coming. But you live in a very blue state. I'm assuming it's more blue than Indiana. So what can people who are in elective office or people that consider themselves activists in this area do to make sure, okay, if we get the House back, we have the House, the Senate, and the White House, and please don't say get rid of the filibuster because we've seen that's not going to work. What can we do to make politicians more accountable to not just saying, oh, I support a woman's rights to choose, remove from that to, okay, here's the legislation that's going to ensure that a woman has the right to choose?
I think getting more people who are actually willing to do it into office and then pressuring them. So all this stuff about, oh, how terrible to be protesting outside Supreme Court justices' houses. It's like, for me, the line I draw is if that public figure, a politician, has kids under 18, still at home with them, then I wouldn't protest at the House. Otherwise, I think it's fair game to peacefully, legally, obeying the law, protest outside their house and apply pressure. And you can also one thing I think is how do you put pressure on members of Congress or elected representatives who just don't want to listen? They don't care. Well, they care about winning their seat again and about raising money. So find a way to threaten one of those two things. One thing you could do is start a PAC to unseat that person and say, if you don't start supporting Roe v. Wade or start supporting, a woman's right to choose as a bill, then we're going to start this PAC and start fundraising against you and run somebody against you and just blast you in the media as much as we possibly can, and not be afraid to use that kind of negative pressure. I think a lot of people are worried about access and like, oh, we don't want to hurt our relationship with this politician. He has meetings with us like once a year and we don't want to threaten that. It's like, well, what is that one meeting a year getting you? Nothing. I wouldn't worry about access. Like, just go full bore to get people to do what you want.
That was a great answer, and I'll give Susan's comment before I go to my last question. And then she has another one there. She says, literally a red herring. Thank you, Susan, for commenting so much. But the last question is, of course, where is it that we can find you in terms of making a contribution to your campaign or learning more about you?
Yeah, you can go to RebeccaParson.com and click on the donate button, or if you can't donate right now, enter your email address to get updates from me. And the on the screen, Rebecca for WA, that's my handle on every social media platforms, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. And you can find me on any of those, most active on Twitter. So yeah, find me on social media or at RebeccaParson.com.
I want to thank you so much for this. I'm so glad Anna set this up.
Yeah.
To do
Me
this.
too. Thank you, Anna.
Yeah, she was just like, you got to talk to her. I'm like, but Anna, I live in Indiana. But she's like, no, you got to talk to her. And I'm glad I did. So everybody that's in the comment sections, they're on my Patreons. We will not have an after party tonight. We will not have one. We'll probably do it next Thursday. And the topic will be, I'm telling you now, top 4 group of female sitcoms. That'll be the topic, because we do something totally fun in the after chat. We don't do politics.
Good idea.
But we'll do that. But in terms of this, please remember to hit the like button, the share button, comment, subscribe if you're not, support me on Patreon, and I appreciate everyone watching. Look for this video in the next couple of hours on my website. I will talk to you all later and have a fantastic evening.